Arrival in a country that never stopped building, September 3rd, 1943. New York Harbor, 6:18 a.m. The fog lifts slowly. At first, Carl Weiss can only see shadows, dark vertical shapes rising out of the gray Atlantic mist. He leans forward at the rail, squinting, unsure whether what he's looking at is real or just exhaustion playing tricks on his eyes. Then the sun breaks through. Steel towers emerge from the haze. Bridges stretch across water wider than any river he has ever seen. Cranes stand frozen in place like mechanical giants, their arms extended over docks already busy with movement. The ship slows. Below deck, German prisoners of war begin to gather quietly, drawn upward by something they can't yet explain. No one speaks. Even the men who usually whisper jokes or complaints fall silent. Weiss has crossed half the world in chains, but nothing prepared him for this. He has seen cities before. Hamburg, Cologne, Berlin. This is different. New York does not look wounded. It does not look strained. It looks busy. As the transport ship glides deeper into the harbor, Weiss notices the details that unsettle him the most. Not the skyscrapers, not the size, but the motion. Everything is moving. Trucks roll endlessly along the docks. Trains snake through warehouses without pause. Cranes lift steel beams, crates, entire vehicles, setting them down with practiced precision before swinging back for more. No rubble, no gaps, no signs of bombing. An American guard stands nearby, relaxed, chewing gum. Weiss watches him for a moment, then gestures toward the harbor before catching himself. "How many ships?" Weiss asks quietly, his English rough but understandable. The guard glances around, uninterested. Today or in general? The answer is not meant to be cruel. It is casual. That makes it worse. As the prisoners are ordered below to prepare for disembarkation, Weiss's mind races. Germany's ports. What remains of them are wrecked, choked with debris, constantly under air attack. Cargo waits for days, sometimes weeks if it arrives at all. Here, ships unload as others arrive behind them. The gangway drops. Weiss steps onto American soil for the first time. The dock beneath his boots is solid concrete, uncracked. Painted lines guide vehicles into precise lanes. Workers move quickly but without panic. No one shouts, no one runs. Efficiency, Weiss realizes, does not look dramatic. It looks boring. As they are marched past endless rows of stacked cargo, Weiss recognizes markings stenciled on crates: steel, machinery, vehicles, food, so much food. The scale is impossible to grasp. It is not a depot. It is not a warehouse. It is a system. One of the older prisoners, a former machinist from the Ruhr, slows his step, eyes wide. "This is just one port," the man whispers. "Just one." Weiss feels a cold weight settle in his chest. If this is one port, what does the rest of the country look like? The trucks never stop. As the POW column moves toward waiting rail cars, Weiss notices something else. Factories lining the horizon, smokestacks rising in clusters, all active. Smoke curls upward steadily, not in bursts from emergency repairs, but in the calm rhythm of production. This country, he realizes, never stopped building. Not during defeats, not during victories, not even now. The train doors slide open. Inside are clean wooden benches, space, light. As Weiss climbs aboard, he looks back one last time at the harbor, at the cranes already unloading the next ship, at the workers moving with quiet confidence. For the first time since his capture, a thought enters his mind. Not fear, not anger, but something far more final. Germany did not lose this war at the front. It lost it here, in places like this, where production never paused long enough to feel the war at all. The train jolts forward, and the realization travels with him deeper into the country, deeper into a truth he will not be able to escape. The first factory tour that changed. Everything September 6, 1943, somewhere in Pennsylvania. Late afternoon. The train slows gradually, not with the screeching halt Weiss is used to, but with a smooth deceleration that feels deliberate, controlled. When the doors slide open, the sound hits first. Metal. Not explosions, not collapsing masonry, rhythmic, constant metal, hammering, presses slamming, conveyor belts rattling, a deep mechanical hum that never seems to stop, even as the train comes to rest. The German POWs step down onto the platform and instinctively look for cover. There is none. Because there is no danger. Ahead of them stretches a factory complex so large Weiss cannot immediately tell where it begins or ends. Brick buildings connect to steel additions, which connect to newer concrete halls. Windows glow with interior light despite the late hour. Smokestacks pour out steady columns of smoke, not emergency smoke, not fire, but production. An American officer gestures calmly. This way. They are marched past a fence line and into a yard stacked with finished goods, not raw materials, finished products, engines in crates, gear assemblies, vehicle frames wrapped in protective oil paper, everything labeled, everything accounted for. Weiss feels his pace slow. Back home, factories looked like scars, bombed, repaired, bombed again. Workers exhausted, parts missing, production constantly interrupted. Here, the war feels distant, abstract. Inside the main hall, the noise becomes overwhelming. Assembly lines stretch the length of the building. Workers, men and women, stand at fixed stations, repeating precise movements with mechanical certainty. Each person performs one task again and again without hesitation. An engine block slides past. Bolts are tightened. Another slides forward. Weiss watches, mesmerized. A former German factory supervisor beside him whispers, "They've broken the process apart." Weiss nods. He understands. In Germany, skilled workers built entire components. Here, skill has been redistributed, simplified, multiplied. No single person is irreplaceable. That is the most terrifying part. An American guide raises his voice over the noise. 3 shifts, he says. 24 hours. Weiss catches the words and feels his stomach tighten. 24 hours. No blackout. No air raid sirens. No interruptions. The line never stops. They pass a wall covered in charts. Production figures, weekly totals, targets exceeded. One number catches Weiss's eye. He blinks, thinking he is misunderstood. That many? Per week? The guide notices the look. That's just this plant, he adds casually. Just this plant. Weiss thinks of Germany's desperate attempts to consolidate production, to hide factories underground, to move machinery at night. All efforts spent simply trying to survive. Here, survival is assumed. A German POW finally asks the question hanging in the air. Has this factory been bombed? The guide looks confused for a moment. Then he smiles slightly. No. The word lands harder than any insult. No. They move on. Outside, as dusk settles, the factory lights burn brighter, illuminating workers arriving for the night shift. Fresh faces, clean clothes, lunch pails in hand. Weiss watches them file inside, replacing the previous shift without ceremony. No exhaustion, no desperation, just continuity. As the POWs are loaded back onto the train, Weiss feels something irreversible settle in his mind. This factory is not exceptional. It is typical. And Germany, he realizes, is not losing because it lacks courage or intelligence. It is losing because it is fighting a country that has turned production itself into a weapon. The train pulls away. Behind them, the factory continues, unchanged, uninterrupted, unconcerned. Trains, highways, and the shock of scale. September 10th, 1943. Moving west through Ohio. Early morning. The train does not stop. Carl Weiss wakes to motion, the steady, uninterrupted rhythm of steel wheels on steel rails. No sudden braking, no long waits on sidings, no backing up to let another train pass. It simply moves. He sits up on the wooden bench and looks through the narrow window. The sun is rising over fields that stretch farther than he can see. Corn, wheat, pastures dotted with cattle. Roads run alongside the tracks, smooth and straight, carrying trucks in both directions. Trucks everywhere. Weiss counts them instinctively. Flatbeds, fuel tankers, covered cargo trucks, civilian cars mixed in without disruption. Nothing is halted for the war. In Germany, trains crawled. Bomb damage forced detours. Fuel shortages slowed everything. Timetables were suggestions, not guarantees. Here, timetables appear to be law. The POWs pass through town after town. Each has its own sidings, its own warehouses. Grain elevators rising like towers beside the tracks. Every few miles, another spur peels off toward an unseen destination. A former German railway engineer named Vogel presses his face closer to the glass. This line alone, he whispers, could carry the entire supply of an army group. Weiss believes him. At a junction, the train slows slightly, but does not stop as another freight train crosses ahead of them. It is longer than anything Weiss has ever seen. Boxcar after boxcar rolls past, loaded and sealed, each marked with stenciled destinations: Chicago, Detroit, Pittsburgh, cities Weiss has heard of only in briefings, industrial centers spoken of in theory. Now he sees how they connect. The American rail network is not a collection of lines, it is a web. At a brief halt for water, Weiss notices something else that chills him. The rails are new, ballast clean, signals modern, no makeshift repairs, no warped steel. Bombers have never touched this system. An American guard notices his stare. "Built it right the first time," he says casually. The train resumes. Hours later, the POWs cross a wide river on a bridge so massive Weiss cannot see the ends. Traffic continues uninterrupted above and below. Barges move beneath them, loaded with coal and steel. Coal. Germany had fought entire campaigns to secure it. Here it floats calmly downstream. As the day wears on, Weiss realizes the scale is not just physical, it is temporal. Everything here has depth. Rail lines laid decades earlier. Highways planned, paved, maintained. Infrastructure built long before the war and never abandoned during it. Germany built desperately. America built patiently. Late in the afternoon, the train runs parallel to a newly constructed highway. Concrete lanes stretch straight to the horizon. Construction crews work even now, pouring more, extending it further. Weiss shakes his head slowly. "Why build more?" he asks aloud, forgetting for a moment that no one expects him to speak. The guard shrugs. "Gonna need it." That answer terrifies Weiss more than any statistic. America is not building to win the war. It is building for what comes after. When the train finally slows near its destination, Weiss feels drained, not from exhaustion, but from comprehension. He has seen enough to understand something fundamental. This country does not mobilize for war. It absorbs war into what it already is. As the POWs disembark, Weiss steps onto another platform, clean, wide, organized. Trucks wait in precise rows. More rails stretch away in every direction. Germany, he realizes, is trying to fight an industrial war with a fragile spine. America's spine is steel, and it is unbreakable. Warehouses bigger than German cities, September 14th, 1943. Midwest United States. Late afternoon. The trucks turn off the highway and roll through a wide gate without slowing. Carl Weiss watches the guard wave them through with a casual lift of his hand. No inspection, no urgency. The convoy moves like it belongs here. Ahead, the land opens up and then disappears beneath concrete. Weiss leans forward, eyes narrowing. At first, he thinks he's looking at a rail yard. Then he realizes the buildings are too tall, too wide, too uniform. Warehouses, not one, not two, dozens. They stretch across the flat landscape in long, rectangular blocks, each one larger than the factory complexes Weiss knew back home. Rail spurs run directly into the structures. Trucks queue at loading bays that seem to go on forever. The truck stops. The POWs are ordered out. As Weiss steps down, the scale finally overwhelms him. He turns slowly, trying to find an edge, some sign that this place ends. It doesn't. An American logistics officer stands nearby, clipboard tucked under his arm. He speaks calmly, almost proudly. "Storage and distribution," he says. "Supplies come in, supplies go out." A German POW beside Weiss whispers, "For how many units?" The officer hears him. "Depends on the week." Weiss swallows. Inside the first warehouse, the air is cool and dry. The smell is unfamiliar. Oil, wood, metal, preserved food. Rows of shelving rise toward the ceiling. Stacked with crates so high, Weiss has to tilt his head back to see the top. Every crate is labeled. Every label is dated. Every date is recent. This is not stockpiling. This is flow. They walk past sections marked for food, canned meat, flour, sugar, coffee. Entire aisles devoted to single items. Forklifts hum past them, lifting pallets that weigh more than a car. Weiss catches a glimpse of a crate stamped with the destination, Pacific Theater. "How far is that?" someone asks quietly. The officer answers without hesitation, "About 8,000 miles." The crate does not look special. It is one of thousands. Weiss feels a pressure in his chest that has nothing to do with fear. In Germany, supplies vanished on the journey. Bombed trains, destroyed depots, delayed shipments that arrived too late to matter. Here, distance seems irrelevant. They move into another section, vehicles. Jeeps packed tightly, tires wrapped, engines preserved. Spare parts stacked by the ton, engines in crates, gearboxes, axles. A former German quartermaster shakes his head slowly. "We never had this," he murmurs. "Not even close." An American worker overhears and smiles politely. "You should see the next building." The next building is worse. It contains nothing but uniforms, boots, helmets, blankets, medical supplies. Bandages stacked in quantities Weiss has never imagined. Entire walls of crates marked with red crosses. Hospitals, Weiss realizes, are never waiting for supplies here. The POWs are silent now. There is nothing left to say. As they exit into the sunlight, Weiss looks back once more at the warehouses, at the trains pulling in on one side and out on the other, at the trucks rolling without pause. This place does not exist to inspire awe. It exists to prevent shortages. And in that purpose, Weiss understands something devastating. Germany was always reacting, scrambling to fix what had already been broken. America planned for shortages before they could exist. The trucks start up again. As they pull away, Weiss sees another convoy arriving from the opposite direction, identical in size, identical in purpose. The system feeds itself. And Germany, he now knows, never stood a chance against something built like this. The assembly line that never slept, September 18, 1943, Detroit, Michigan. Night. Darkness does not slow the city. Carl Weiss stands at the edge of a factory floor so vast he cannot see its far wall. Overhead lights blaze without flicker, turning night into a permanent artificial day. The air vibrates with motion conveyors rattling, presses stamping, engines roaring in test bays. The sound is constant, layered, alive. This is not one factory, it is an ecosystem. Automobile plants converted seamlessly to war production stretch for miles. Where civilian cars once rolled off lines, military trucks now take shape. Chassis slide forward, axles are fitted, engines lowered into place by cranes that never stop moving. Weiss watches a bare frame become a vehicle in minutes, not hours, minutes. A foreman points down the line, voice raised only slightly to be heard. "That one will be rolling by morning." Morning. In Germany, entire plants waited days for a single missing component. Here, missing parts seem inconceivable. Every station is supplied. Every worker knows the exact motion required. If one falters, another steps in. The line does not pause for individuals. That is its strength. Women work beside men, sleeves rolled, hair tied back, faces focused. Older workers replace younger ones sent overseas. Teenagers fill gaps without ceremony. Skill is taught quickly. Tasks are simplified, repeated, perfected. A German POW whispers, "They don't need masters." Weiss nods. Master craftsmen were Germany's pride and its bottleneck. America has removed the bottleneck. They pass a wall covered in clocks, each showing a different shift change. When one group leaves, another enters immediately, tools already in hand. No shutdown, no restart. 24 hours, 7 days a week. An engineer explains casually. "We used to stop for holidays." Used to. In a test bay, engines roar to life one after another, their sound stacking until it feels physical. Mechanics check gauges, signal approval, and wave the machine onward. Weiss feels small, not insignificant, but outdated. Germany builds carefully, beautifully, slowly. America builds relentlessly. As the POWs are led out, Weiss notices trains idling beside the plant, already loaded with finished vehicles. Trucks wait beyond them, engines running. Production here does not end at the factory door, it flows. Outside, the night sky glows faintly from reflected light. The city hums, alive and unconcerned. Weiss realizes something that finally strips away the last illusion. Bombing could never stop this. Even if one plant fell, 10 more would continue. Even if a city burned, production would shift, reroute, resume. Germany had concentrated its industry. America had distributed it. That decision alone decided the war. As the trucks roll away, Weiss watches their taillights disappear into the darkness. Countless, orderly, unstoppable. This line never slept, and because of that, neither did American power. POW. Conversations. We never had a chance. September 22nd, 1943. POW. Camp, Midwest United States. Night. The barracks are quiet in the way only well-fed men can be quiet. Karl Weiss lies on his bunk, staring at the wooden beams above him, listening to the low murmur of voices drifting through the room. There is no coughing tonight, no restless shifting, no groans from empty stomachs. The war feels far away here. Across the aisle, a former artillery officer named Becker sits upright, elbows on his knees, cigarette glowing faintly in the dark. He exhales slowly, watching the smoke rise. "We never had a chance," Becker says, not loudly, not bitterly, just factual. No one disagrees. Earlier that evening, the men had returned from another work detail, this time unloading crates of machine parts bound for a factory none of them had ever heard of. The crates were new, clean, marked with destinations hundreds, sometimes thousands of kilometers apart. Nothing improvised, nothing desperate. The conversations that follow such days always circle the same realization. "In Germany," says Vogel, the railway engineer, "we argued about priorities, Army versus Air Force, tanks versus aircraft." He pauses, then adds quietly, "Here, they don't argue, they produce." Weiss turns his head slightly, listening. A younger POW asks the question everyone has asked themselves at least once. When did we lose? The room goes still, not because the answer is unknown, but because it is painful to say out loud. Becker speaks again. "When we assumed skill could replace supply." No one interrupts him. "We believed better soldiers would overcome shortages. Better tactics would compensate for fewer machines. That courage could make up for fuel, steel, food." He shakes his head slowly. That only works for a while. Weiss thinks back to the Eastern Front, to stalled offensives waiting for ammunition, to orders rewritten because trains never arrived, to units reduced not by enemy fire but by hunger and exhaustion. "We fought brilliantly," Vogel says, "against countries like ourselves." The implication hangs heavy in the air. Germany was prepared for a European war. America was prepared for a global one. Another voice joins in, a former machinist from Essen. "We built things to last," he says. "They build things to replace." Weiss understands the difference now. Germany treated equipment as precious. Repairs were constant. Reuse was mandatory. Every loss mattered. America treated equipment as temporary. If it broke, it was replaced. If it was destroyed, another followed behind it. That philosophy changes everything. The conversation drifts late into the night. No ideology, no speeches, just men comparing what they believed with what they have seen. Factories that never stop. Trains that never wait. Warehouses that never empty. Eventually, someone laughs softly. Not humor, but disbelief. "All that," the man says, "and we thought the war would be decided by a single decisive battle." The laughter fades quickly. Weiss rolls onto his side, eyes open. For the first time since his capture, he stops imagining alternative outcomes. No secret weapons, no last offensives, no miracles. The defeat feels complete now, not imposed, but understood. When the lights dim fully, the barracks fall silent again. Outside, somewhere beyond the fence, a train horn sounds in the distance. Then another still. The country keeps moving. Germany, Weiss knows, cannot catch something like this. And for the men lying awake in these bunks, the war is already over. Not because someone told them so, but because they have seen the truth with their own eyes. Industry as a weapon, September 28, 1943. Midwest United States. Overcast morning. The rain does not stop the work. Karl Weiss watches from the back of an open truck as it rolls past another industrial complex, this one surrounded by rail lines and power cables that hum faintly even through the drizzle. Workers move in and out of buildings without hurry, coats pulled tight, lunch pails swinging at their sides. No one looks concerned about the weather. No one looks concerned about the war. Inside the plant, the sound is familiar now, constant, organized, relentless. Weiss has learned to distinguish it from chaos. This is not noise, it is rhythm. An American supervisor explains the layout to another group of visitors nearby, his voice carrying across the floor. Raw materials enter on one side, finished components leave on the other. Nothing crosses paths unnecessarily. Nothing waits longer than it has to. It's like a weapon, Vogel mutters beside Weiss. He's right. In Germany, weapons were built inside factories. Here, the factory itself is the weapon. Weiss notices something subtle, but crucial. Every process has redundancy. Multiple power feeds, backup machines standing ready, extra parts stacked nearby, not locked away, not rationed. If one machine fails, another takes its place. If one worker is absent, another steps in. There is no single point of failure. An American engineer notices Weiss studying a wall diagram and smiles. "We design it so the system survives mistakes," he says. Mistakes. Weiss thinks of how unforgiving German production had become. One missed shipment, one delayed repair, one bombed substation, an entire region slowed or stopped. Here, mistakes are absorbed. That realization hits harder than anything else he has seen, because war is nothing but mistakes. On the floor below, finished crates are already being sealed and labeled. The destinations read like a map of the world: North Africa, Britain, Pacific Islands Weiss has never heard of. "How many of these places do you supply?" a POW asks quietly. The engineer shrugs. "All of them." The casual certainty is crushing. As the POWs are escorted out, Weiss looks back one last time at the endless motion. He realizes the Americans are not reacting to the war anymore. They are executing a plan. Germany improvises. America schedules. Germany scrambles. America delivers. That difference turns time itself into an ally. Back on the truck, Weiss listens as Vogel finally says what everyone is thinking. "You can't defeat this," he says. "You can only hope it stops." The truck rolls past another plant, then another. Smoke rises steadily, evenly, without urgency. This country does not surge, it endures, and in that endurance, Weiss understands the final truth. Industry is not supporting the American war effort, it is the war effort, the quiet realization of defeat. October 3rd, 1943. POW, Camp, Midwest United States. Early evening. The sun sinks slowly behind the fence. Carl Weiss sits on a wooden bench outside the barracks, hands resting on his knees, watching the light fade across fields that stretch uninterrupted to the horizon. Somewhere beyond them, a train horn sounds, low, distant, unhurried. He has stopped counting the trains. At some point, it became meaningless. Around him, the camp settles into its nightly routine. Men wash, talk quietly, write letters. The guards stand relaxed, rifles slung casually, more observers than enforcers. Dinner had been served an hour ago. It was plentiful. It always is. Weiss no longer thinks about hunger. That realization alone would have stunned the man he was a year ago. A letter lies folded in his pocket. It arrived that morning, months late, edges worn thin from handling. His wife writes of ration cards, of coal departments, of factories running on half shifts because the power fails so often. She tries not to complain. She does not need to. Weiss has seen the comparison for himself. Germany is fighting scarcity. America is fighting distance. And distance, he now understands, is the easier enemy. As darkness falls, Becker joins him on the bench. They sit without speaking for a while, listening to the sounds of the camp. Somewhere inside the barracks, someone laughs softly. "Do you remember," Becker says finally, "how we thought bombing would cripple them?" Weiss nods. They had believed that destroying factories would collapse production, that breaking rail lines would paralyze movement, that fear would slow the system. They had never understood the system. "You can't bomb an idea," Becker continues, "and you can't bomb redundancy." Weiss watches the guards change shifts with practiced ease. Everything here is scheduled, planned, calm. The war, in this place, feels like a distant administrative problem. That is what frightens him most. Germany is fighting with urgency. America is fighting with patience. Weiss thinks back to the harbor in New York, to the factories, the warehouses, the endless rail lines, the assembly lines that never slept. All of it connected. All of it protected by geography, planning, and time. No single victory could undo it. No single weapon could reverse it. Even if Germany won every battle tomorrow, it would still lose the war of production. That is the truth. The POWs have come to accept quietly, without ceremony. No speeches, no declarations, just understanding. As the lights inside the barracks flicker on, Weiss stands and heads toward the door. Tomorrow there will be another work detail, another train, another factory, another reminder. Before stepping inside, he pauses and looks once more toward the horizon. Somewhere beyond it, machines are running, steel is being shaped, supplies are moving. The war continues, not with explosions, but with motion. Germany, he knows now, is trying to stop a river with bare hands, and rivers do not stop. They only keep flowing until everything in their path is worn away.